So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, and their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Max Johnson, who's director at Johnson Insurance Services. So, firstly, Max, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Johnson Insurance Services, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Hi, Chris. Well, thank you very much for inviting me onto your podcast. I feel very honoured to be asked from a very humble insurance brokerage.
Very welcome.
So my name is Max Johnson. I'm director and founder of Johnson Insurance Services. We set the business up 8 years ago. We're an independent insurance brokerage that specializes in commercial and private client insurance. I am a chartered insurance broker personally, and it's something I'm looking forward to trying to get the business to charter status, but that's something that's sort of work in progress at the moment. I suppose areas we specialize in is anything from contractors to professional risks to hospitality to farms, private client, that we sort of mentioned. And I suppose that's us really in a nutshell.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what would make a great client for you, whether that's type of personal business or personality, or what are the people you help best, do you feel?
Um, well, I suppose our game is very much it's very much a sort of people's industry, and I suppose it's very important that you get on with the client. I think you've got to have a good relationship with them. It's got to be very open. Um, to be able to share information and sort of very transparent sort of both ways. So a good client, I suppose, is one that is in an area that you specialize in, so you can bring value to their business. And again, one that sort of comes to the table open-minded to
Yeah.
do business. I suppose that those would be the sort of key attributes, Chris.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, look, if we look back for a little while and think about, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background, how
Mm.
you got into business, and why this particular one for you.
That's a good question. So I moved up to Yorkshire 15 years ago now, and it was primarily to race ride, to be an amateur jockey, which doesn't sound like much of a sort of career move, but I was
No.
25 and something I was just really keen on and passionate to do. So yeah, did that as an amateur for 8 years and absolutely loved it. And I suppose from that world of the sort of the horse racing world, you sort of you meet a lot of colorful characters and you meet a lot of connections, etc. And but at the time, I got a job with a local large independent insurance brokerage, and the sort of the aim was, I suppose, to do sort of bloodstock and all things equine. So started there about the sort of same sort of time in 2010, and it was very much sort of learning as we went along the way. So you sort of had to learn pretty quickly, although I sort of stayed very much within my sort of bracket. So sort of literally equine, farm, and private client. Um, and yeah, so I did that for 8 years, and I sort of got to the end of it, and I suppose race riding was coming to an end, and I suppose I felt like sort of a challenge and a change, and I learned a lot along the way in the first 8 years of insurance. There's a lot to learn, so yeah, I decided to sort of take the plunge and take the leap of faith and set Johnson Insurance up services up in 2018. Um, so yeah, really that's sort of how it really all began.
Wowzers, that's fascinating. Now, as
Yeah.
Emma said, I came to Yorkshire to become. Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, growing up, did you always foresee yourself running a business, or was sport more of a thing for you?
So growing up, I was always surrounded by lots of horses. My mother was a professional eventer. Dad used to point to point as well and hunt, and so we always had lots and lots of horses around. And I suppose when I left school, I went and worked for a racehorse trainer, then went to university, discovered the university wasn't for me. So I wanted to just go into the sort of the big wide world and start working. So I got a job in gambling, working for a company called Betfair,
Yeah.
and I did that for a year before moving to a company called Fitstairs in London, who are sort of private bookmaker. They were just starting up, so again, it was sort of very exciting times, and again, it was you really learnt a lot again from them being a small business, as just how the sort of volatility of it and etc. But it was great. It was but sort of at the end of those sort of 3 years in sort of 2009, 10, so I was 25 at the time, I'd always had this sort of burning ambition to basically want to ride. And it was it's
Brilliant.
sort of funny time in your life when you probably should be sort of kicking on with with your career. But I sort of decided to sort of take a bit of a step backwards and focus on what I loved. But at the same time, I did work hard in the insurance,
Yeah.
and you had a lot to learn, and anyone that works in sales will know that it never comes to you. You've
Yes.
got to go out
100%.
and get it. So. But as I sort of said earlier, through the equine world or the racehorse world, you meet a lot of people, you make a lot of connections, and that sort of opens
Yes.
up doors and opportunities. But again, you still got to go out there and get it.
I'm just realizing we've taken away from Cheltenham. It's
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the first time in a long time I haven't been in Cheltenham on a Tuesday. But
goodness.
that's what business does to you, running your own business and having a young family, how things have changed.
Absolutely. Before we move on to business, because I'm obviously a little bit fascinated by this.
Yeah.
What are your fondest memories of that part of your life?
God, I have a lot of happy memories. I mean, for anyone in that world, they'll know, unless your name's Willie Mullins, most of it's disappointment.
Yes.
And so, yeah, 90% of the time, there's always disappointment one way or another, or breaking something, or a horse breaking down, or injuring themselves. So, for the majority of the time, it was disappointment. But for the times it did go well, it was great. And I suppose you need that. It's like anything, you need perspective in life. So the
Yeah.
disappointment really added to the good times when they came around, the seldom sort of times. But I just love the journey of it, the getting up, the riding out, the working out a plan with your owners, and with families. We also had a few of our own horses, and just that sort of that collaborative team effort. And I suppose when it really came off, the it was even sweeter when
Brilliant.
you did have a winner. So yeah, very fond memories. I suppose you do probably look back through rose tinted glasses more like anything in life, because a lot of the time I was sort of I'd broken some bone, I was off,
Yeah.
and or watching someone else ride your horse that went and won, or I don't know. It was yeah,
Wonderful.
it was an interesting time, Chris. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. So we talked about your early start moving into insurance and then starting
Mm.
your business. So since starting a business, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome as you've grown?
Well, some of the biggest challenges, I suppose, once you've sort of made that decision, you take the leap, which is probably one of the hardest, I think, for
Yes.
anyone, because what I would say is, the time is really never right. And so
Yes.
once you've made that, you're on your own and you're thinking on your feet. You don't know what's really going to come, and you've got to try lots and lots of different things, and some things will work, some things won't. Um, actually, what I'd probably say is the first few years were weirdly enough probably the most plain sailing, because it was just it lay with you. The buck laid with you. If you didn't get out of bed, nothing happened. Then
Yes.
that and sorry, if you didn't get out of bed, nothing happened.
Yep.
As opposed to when as you grow and you start taking people on, obviously you've then got other variables with other people, and so yeah, I'd say probably, as we've got a great team now, but the bigger you get, the more people you have. I think that becomes the hardest challenge.
Yeah, that's really, yeah, no, I can totally align with that. In fact, I found that Brad Sugar's he's written a number of books, but one is it's in his book Billionaire in Training. So
Mhm.
he talks about a book he's written about how he foresee saw his journey as a business owner, and basically we've got this one of this sort of entrepreneurial ladder where most people start as a student or something, whether it's school or
Mm,
university,
mm,
and then move on to employment. Not everybody. I know about 10 people personally that went straight into business, but most people work for somebody else. But then what's interesting is we then take as Michael Gerber talks about the entrepreneurial seizure of becoming self-employed. So typically
mm,
us, it might be one or two people, but primarily we are the business and we're doing the work. So the self-employed stage, but there are then different stages of identity. So the next one is if if we're good at what we do, we typically have more work than we can cover. So we do need other people
mm,
to come into the business. Then we need to become a manager. So we go from self-employed to a manager of other people, and that's a different set of skills, a
mm.
different identity. And then moving on into business ownership, being a business owner is typically other people are managing the people who are doing the work, and it's they're a different stage. But it's different stage
Yeah.
of identity and learning how to do those things. So that totally makes sense
Mm.
of how you've progressed. And and obviously you've gone through some of these stages already. And what do you say are some of the biggest learnings you have of growing a business specifically?
The biggest learnings of growing a business. So what outside of your sort of challenges?
Yeah, so obviously you face the challenge and overcome them. What are some
Mm,
of the things? So I mean, obviously you've identified it's very much about and a bit growth. Building a team obviously requires us to learn how
mm.
to manage and grow people. How any learnings around the marketing, sales, that you found?
Yeah, I'd probably say I'd probably say the more you put in, the more you get out.
Great.
That's pretty simple, and that's what I'd
Yeah.
always say to my sales team. The more you're out and about, the more emails you send, the more calls you make, the more opportunities you'll get. The more opportunities you'll get, the more conversions you will make, the more risks you'll get put on cover, and the more opportunities you have, the better you get at what you
Yep.
do, the more you're able to refine it. So then that conversion rate will go up. Um, I'd say that is probably one of the largest. I think what we were touching on earlier, Chris, like it's it's uh it's really about the journey. It's
Yep.
not about the
Yeah.
end goal. So you really have to enjoy the sort of the everyday, the challenges. You have to enjoy the thinking on your feet, not quite knowing what's going to come, and how to deal with it. There isn't, well, there probably are lots of manuals on it, and you try and read and take in as much as you can of other people's sort of views and what they've experienced. But ultimately, it's your first go at it. Well, it is mine anyway. And so, yeah, I'd say those are probably the biggest two. And I suppose with people, just be fair and be consistent. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, be consistent and fair. Those would be the two main
Brilliant.
things I probably take away with dealing with people.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Mm.
And I think you're aware we talked earlier that we're a business coaching organisation. So
Mhm.
I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest influence on you?
Um, that's a good question. I can't actually think of any. That's really bad, isn't it? So I shouldn't really. I can't actually think of any, in the recent years that I've had. Which something probably it looks like I might need to change. But yeah, I haven't actually had any. Hold my hands up. I'm
All good.
ashamed to say it. Probably
Yeah,
be
no, I
myself,
mean,
being my highest critic of my sort of self. But again, you need a third party point of view to be able to give you some advice, not
sometimes
tell,
you need,
not tell you what to do, but just throw some other things
yeah,
in the mix. Yeah.
and sometimes just a third party to help you not be a hardest critic, if that makes sense.
Well, that's very true. Yeah,
Sometimes
that's
it's
a
been
that's a
to peer
good.
support. I think that's the big thing about coaching. It is sometimes to hold people accountable to do what they say they're going to do in
Mhm,
difficult areas where
mhm,
we're not very comfortable. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people I work with beat themselves up quite regularly,
mm.
and it's being able to take myself. Well, look what you've achieved. Why would you choose to criticize yourself that much when the evidence is you're doing a damn good
Doing a
job?
good job. Yeah.
That's yeah, but it's the human condition we're dealing with. That's the challenge. And the one thing I've learned, and that's why I have my own coach, is we can't coach ourselves very easily because it's
No, and I'm holding my hands up. So I definitely realize that's probably been a failing among lots of others, but one of my
well, there we
failures.
are. There's the self-criticism again. No, we can stop that. Brilliant. And do you have any favorite? You mentioned one about working hard, which I think is bang on. But do you have
Yeah.
any favorite quotes or sayings you catch yourself using on a regular basis?
I mean, I've got quite a few really, but again, they probably all sort of boil down to the same sort of principle. But probably one of my favorite is in baseball and business, there are three types of people. There are those that make it happen, those that watch it happen, and those that wondered what happened. And I think that's probably one of my sort of favorite that sort of rings
Brilliant.
in my head.
Brilliant.
Then others are sort of, like you always, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. They're all sort of vaguely the same type of thing, but yeah, they ultimately really come down for me. The more you put in, really, the more you get out of things.
There's,
Yeah,
there's some interesting ones. Mentioned shots, and you missed 100% of the shots you did.
yeah,
I completely agree. I remember
mm,
getting invited to an event that was really keen to go to just by saying, I hope you don't mind me asking, but if you don't ask, the answer's always no. And
yeah,
it tickled the guy so much. He said, I've got to invite you now. You've said that. But I think the other one, there's a couple of really well known sort of, they're not just phrases, but they're
mm,
both I remember Roger Federer and Michael Johnson both talked about the stats of they missed more shots than they made. And it was the ability to forget the shots that they'd missed
mm,
and
mm,
focus on the next shot and making the next shot as well as it could be. And despite the aura that they were
mm,
invincible, they did lose
mm.
more points than they
Yeah,
actually. And I think that can help us go. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be a bit better than we were yesterday. I think that's
yeah. That's again, that comes down to again another very good book. I think it's called is it the 1%? Or no, there's a very good book on I can't actually remember it now. But anyway, it's basically about continual improvement, whereby you just aim for being 1% better than you were
absolutely. And that
just continually. And so that's the same type of outlook on
absolutely. I think it was demonstrated really well by the British cycling team with
mm,
Dave Brailsford at helm, where they were very much looking at this aggregation of marginal gains, the
mm,
tiny little bits of
mm,
changes of having each rider had took with them their own mattress and bedding and pillows, and they had just because if they just slept that little bit better, they'd be that little bit better.
yeah.
They introduced hygienic hand cleansing way before COVID came into being. Because again, if you could reduce the amount of infection that was passed between people, you were
Mm,
going to have healthier riders. And it was just these little
mm.
bits that made some.
Small games, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, but I mean, have you alongside that one? Have you any other favorite books or podcasts that you read or listen to that helps you?
I mean, I love all those sort of motivational type books. I always find them very insightful to I mean it comes on to another thing I believe just in never stop learning. I think you can
Yeah,
always learn something from any situation, from any person. I feel that's really important, and that's something definitely I've learned. But I'd say things like probably one of my favorite is a book called Starts with Why, and again that's a really good book by Simon Sinek. And uh, yeah, I mean there's been quite a few of them, but that's probably the one that sort of sticks in my mind as one of my sort of
great.
favorite. And it just basically comes down to the sort of the importance of why, asking that question, why, why was the business sort of founded, and on what principles, and the ones that sort of lose their why and sort of can end up being derailed.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean there's so many good ones out there, but again for me it comes down to that want and sort of principle of just of wanting to continue learning and developing.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Mm.
And yeah, talk about learning. What have you say you learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
Um, so when I started the business, I felt that something that was really important to me was is to be the best at what you did. So you could always sit at the table with someone and feel that you were the best at what you did, and you're going to add the most value to the business because effectively you're looking for the appointment over someone else. So you needed to be able to define that value. And I felt just doing it on price alone was never going to have a long term was not a long term solution. So
Yes,
when I started the business, I basically went straight in and did my ACII exams and got chartered and so basically you could it puts you know you it puts you in any situation or you could be in any situation and you've got that knowledge to fall back on. And I felt that was really important, really valuable. So I'd say just being the best at what you do, specializing in it. Um, yeah, and try not to be one thing to all men. That would be probably what I've
brilliant.
yeah.
And I was thinking when you were talking about your racing career was I would imagine you build up some resilience, as you say, when you have there's quite a lot of challenges that match the good times and the successes. I would imagine that helps you build up a healthy level of resilience to life in general.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for all the reasons you've just mentioned, I also, uh, being quite, I don't know, what you don't know, I'm 6'2", so quite on the taller side as well. So you sort of have to
Yeah,
keep keep a keep your weight down, which basically so you're always on a constant diet, and exercising a lot. But I love exercising. Exercising is really important to me and my psyche and routine. It's something that I do every day. I wake up early and I like to go for a run and do yoga when I can, where I can. But that's not actually possible now with young children in a small house because I risk waking them up. So I have to just creep out the house early and go for running and get back. But yes, I've sort of got myself a bit lost on that one. But resilience is very important. Yeah.
brilliant. And
Mm.
and so looking forward, Max, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Um, Exciting, I suppose. I'm very excited about the future. We're going to continue growing our team and the business. We're currently a team of 10, split between York and Fakenham. And yeah, as I think I said to you earlier, I like to be awarded charter status as a broker. Again, just continued developing, improving. Growing, but for the right, growing for the right reasons and with the right clients and the right people. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I'm keen to know what you say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now.
I'd say the time is never right, but I think we were discussing earlier, Chris. It's not for everyone.
Yep.
Look, it's very rewarding if it's something if that's your within your sort of character and mindset, but ultimately it is it's a lonely place, especially if you do it alone, like I did.
Mm,
Obviously if you do it with others, that's great, but that can also bring problems with it, or other challenges, we'll call it. Um, So yeah, I would highly recommend it, but the time is never right. And it is a long road, but you will learn and develop as a person. And I think the other thing would be is you can't be afraid of failure. You've got to be prepared to fail. And if when I say fail, I don't mean failure is something that we probably all look on as a culture is something that's a negative, but failures it's we fail all the time, or I fail probably all the time at what I'm doing, whether it's in business or in personal life. But again, you try and learn from that, and
Yes.
the reason why you failed, and you that's the reason why you grow as a person or as a business is only from your failures. I suppose the key is just not trying to make a failure which is too significant that you
No,
can't come back from. That would be
abs- absolutely. But there aren't many of that. I mean, that's the key. I think there's a great philosophy.
yes, that's
And
true.
I know our founder, Brad, who I mentioned earlier, he said to me many years ago, and he's always stuck with me. He says, and he's a very successful guy. Um, he he said he believes he's as successful as he is because he'd made more mistakes than anybody else he knew,
Mm,
not despite. And it was very much it's that because you've got to have a willingness to fail
mm,
to then move faster than most other people. That the
mm,
that he's well ahead. We're staying well ahead of people that are
mm,
fearful of
mm,
mistakes and failure. Therefore, if we're fearful, we move
mm.
far slower or not at all, and we stay where we are
Agreed.
because
Agreed.
that's our
We,
comfort.
we only we only learn from our mistakes, don't we? We have to
Absolutely,
make a mistake to learn from it.
absolutely,
Just
absolutely.
try not to make the same mistake twice.
No, well, that absolutely 100%. If we learn from it, hopefully we won't. But to
Yeah,
that, yeah, but it doesn't always happen like
it
that, does
does always
it?
happen, but
I know I've done. Yes, I know I've done it a few times. But there we go. Uh, and if you were to start your business again, Max, is there anything significant you think you do differently?
um, I mean, I got a lot of things wrong. Significantly, no. I probably wouldn't be sat here now if I made anything that was significantly wrong. But there's lots of things you would change. But that only comes from, again, like we just said, it comes from experience. And so, if I was to do it again, start again, then you'd like to think that you would make a better job of it second time round. But that's the same principle really to a lot of things in life. There's not many things you do for the first time and you're only good at.
No, there's a great phrase. I'm trying to think about it. I won't say it perfectly, but it's something like success comes from experience, which comes from making mistakes. It's something like that. And
Yeah,
I just love
exactly.
that point is that you have we have to almost go through that. And I certainly believe anyone that's never made a mistake um, has learned very little. So they might be really, really lucky and good for them.
Mm,
But the challenge is it's the process of making mistakes, dealing with mistakes, and moving on that builds, I think, the identity of someone that can continue to grow and be successful. So, however difficult it feels at the point of making a mistake, it's actually a good thing.
yeah, exactly, Chris. It's a mindset. It's how you want to see that mistake or failure. And I think the ones who will go on and grow and do well are the ones who reflect and they go again effectively,
Yeah,
and they learn from it rather than being defeated by it and giving up. I think giving up is that would probably be where the sort of the problem would lie. As you say, that would be the more sort of risk averse approach, of scared to make another mistake. I think you can't be scared to make
absolutely.
mistakes.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, what's the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
Oh my God! Wow, everything. Could I after a misspent youth at school, wasted school? Can I make an 8-year-old me?
Yeah. Why not?
Um, I mean, yeah, I just sort of touch on it again. Just nothing beats hard work. There's no substitute for hard work. So make the most of every opportunity that you get, and continue learning.
Brilliant.
Again, learning and hard work, the two things to take away from this are
Brilliant.
the two things I'd probably leave it at.
Perfect. Um, well, Max, it's been really delightful to talk to you. Really, there's lots of great learnings in what we've discussed. And for anyone that's watching would like to get in touch with you or Johnson Insurance Services, what would be the best way to do that?
Probably find our details on our website, johnsoniinsurance.co.uk. And yeah, please do reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Well, look, for now, thank you so much for your time. It'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and just see what the further developments are. But for now, thanks so much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you.